Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, October the 31st. And a very happy Halloween to all of you. Today is really Halloween. A lot of people celebrate it, I know, over the weekend. And that's usually when people have parties. But today is actually Halloween. Today is when the kids go out, knock on your door and say trick or treat. So I hope you bought some candy so that you're ready when the kids show up. Usually they show up, the little ones kind of come a little bit early. And then, of course, the older ones go out when it gets dark. And I've got a post over at the American Thinker today where I talk about our first Halloween in the United States. Now, when you first come to the United States, and our family came here in 1964, I came with my parents, my brother, and my sister. As you know, we came from Cuba. And that very first holiday, that very first Halloween in the United States, it's really quite a learning experience to say the least. Obviously, we were familiar with other holidays like Christmas and Father's Day and Mother's Day and New Year's Day and Valentine's Day and Independence Day. I mean, stuff like that we were familiar with because most countries have something like that. It may have a different date, like Father's Day or Mother's Day may be a different date, but you still celebrate the occasion. But Halloween was like brand new for us, completely brand new. So we landed in the United States in September of '64, and it didn't take long for Halloween to show up. At first, we began to see some of the pumpkins and stuff like that around school, and some of the kids, putting up some posters about Halloween. And again, for us, it was a whole new thing. We didn't know anything about it. And then I remember our uncle, who was already living in the United States a couple of years before us, he called us in and said, look, it's Halloween. And what that means is that you get all dressed up and you go out, you knock on the door, you say trick or treat, and you're going to get some candy. Now, we thought that was heaven. I mean, my goodness, you mean you get all dressed up and you go out and they give you candy? What a country, right? Well, yeah, that's kind of the way it worked out. We got dressed up, and on Halloween night, we went around, knocked on a few doors and said trick or treat, and we got some candy. And it was a really fascinating experience. And I guess we were on the Halloween bandwagon after that because we didn't fail to appreciate another Halloween in the future. But I think Halloween, maybe Thanksgiving, are the two celebrations in the United States that are very unique to the United States. Now, Halloween, as I understand, comes from Europe, so maybe they have something like that I'm not familiar with. But Halloween and Thanksgiving were the two holidays that we didn't know anything about when we came here. But I tell you, it didn't take us a long time to figure out that, if you wore something or got all dressed up, cowboy or princess or whatever, and you went out, and they gave you some candy. It turned out to be a great evening for my brother, my sister, and I, and we had a lot of fun with our first Halloween. And of course, that was the beginning of many more Halloweens to come. So happy Halloween to you. I hope you had a party last weekend, or if you've got little ones, I hope you come out and enjoy the Halloween. It is, I think, a fun day. And if you get a chance, check out my post over at the American Thinker Tuesday morning. But on a more serious note, there was a terrible situation going on down in Mexico in the city of Acapulco. Acapulco, of course, is a resort on the Pacific coast, a very popular resort for international tourists. It's not as big as Cancun. I think Cancun has now pretty much become number one, but Acapulco still has the name. And still has the images of Acapulco, and they still get millions of people that go through there every single year. Last week, I guess about a week ago, they had a horrible hurricane that has completely devastated Acapulco, and the way it happened was rather bizarre. By the way, speaking of the hurricane in Acapulco, I'm trying to get a guest for one of our upcoming videos. I'm trying to get a guest from Mexico in the next couple of days. So hopefully we can talk about this from the perspective of somebody down there. But generally speaking, what happened was people knew there was a tropical storm in the area, and they went to bed thinking, well, this is just another tropical storm. But then the tropical storm became a Category 5 hurricane, and it just devastated everything in sight. The windows, if you look at some of the pictures, you see entire buildings. Now, I'm not sure if these are office buildings or apartment buildings. They could be hotels. All the windows are gone. And if you look around, there's nothing. I mean, the destruction has been pretty severe. I checked this morning, and they have like 43 people dead. There's a lot of people missing. So that number is probably going to go up considerably. Some people are saying that this was very similar to what happened in Hawaii a couple of months ago, where, there was a hurricane all of a sudden. How exactly it happened, I don't know. I mean, people are still trying to figure out. My experience with hurricanes, having gone through a couple of them when I was a little kid in Cuba, my experience with hurricanes, or what I hear from my parents who lived through several hurricanes in Cuba, is that hurricanes sort of build up. It's not the kind of thing, it's not like a tornado where at 5 o'clock it's, sunshine, and at 5:30 there's a tornado. It's not quite like that. It usually builds up so you can see it coming and you can kind of prepare for it. But in this particular case, I guess nobody saw it coming. They knew there was a hurricane in the area, a tropical storm, but they didn't know that it was going to be anywhere near what it was and as destructive. And of course, when something like this happens, it doesn't take long for the issue to be politicized. A lot of people are blaming the local officials for maybe not being on top of the situation. Obviously, the president of Mexico is in the middle of it as well. So, just like with Katrina back in 2005, when you have one of these natural problems, sometimes the president or the people in power obviously catch all the blame and catch all of the heat, and that's exactly what's happening down there in Mexico at the moment. Now, the damage is going to be very severe. I mean, we're talking billions and billions of dollars. We're talking like there's a famous hotel in Acapulco called the Princess. Maybe you've stayed in it. I've stayed in it a couple of times. It's a beautiful resort. Well, the Princess apparently was devastated by the hurricane. Just completely devastated. I don't know if there were many tourists at the time. I'm sure there were. So the whole thing has been an absolute nightmare for Mexico. And I don't know how much coverage it has gotten up here in the news. I follow Mexican news for personal reasons, but I am not. I don't think it's gotten a lot of coverage up here. But I can tell you, it is the number one story down in Mexico, and it was devastating. The losses are going to be devastating, and when we get a chance to talk to somebody down there, I think you'll see more and more of just how bad it was. The losses, the human losses. The property losses, just absolutely incredible. Just a couple of quick stories that I heard from people. One family was saying they went to bed, no big deal. They went to bed. They wake up with broken windows and all kinds of wind, and they have to go in the bathroom. That was the only place that they could stay. Other people are saying that they were hiding in the stairs, of the buildings. And then, of course, the damage, devastating damage. It's going to cost a lot of money for Mexico to bring back Acapulco, if they can bring it back at all. Because a lot of the businesses and a lot of the properties, I don't know if they're going to get I don't know what kind of insurance they have, whether it's private or whether the federal government, the Mexican government is going to intervene to help out some of these businesses. I mean, I really don't know. But it's going to take a while. I mean, a long time, I think, for Acapulco to get itself back together. Well, you've been following, of course, the situation on the border as I have, and recently Texas sued the federal government because you had federal government officials who were cutting through a barrier that, like some wire, that the Texas government had put there to keep people from crossing into Texas, and the federal government was cutting these barriers and letting people in. Well, Texas took it to the courts, and the very first result from the courts is a victory for Texas. There was a judge who basically said, no, it's not unconstitutional. Let's take a look at it. And, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the final decision. There could still be a negative ruling against Texas. But I've got a post about this coming out tomorrow where I talk about that. I think what this is telling me is that there are judges out there who are beginning to buy into the argument that the federal government is not doing its job, and therefore Texas has to do it for them. And that normally, of course, anything having to do with the border or immigration, the judges or the justices tend to favor the federal government, saying, hey, that's their responsibility. But in this case, because of the failure of the federal government to do anything, Texas has been forced into action. And, the judge is apparently buying that argument for the time being. We'll have to wait for the final results of this case, but so far so good as far as Texas is concerned. Well, we're going to leave you today remembering a fellow by the name of Dave McNally, who was born on this day in 1942. He passed away in 2002. If you're a baseball fan, you remember his name, Dave McNally. He pitched for the Baltimore Orioles. He was a great pitcher for the Orioles, pitched in 4 World Series. In fact, he pitched the winning game of the 1966 World Series. He was a great left-hander, very effective left-hander. And Dave McNally was a huge part of the story of the Orioles back in the 60s and 70s. He passed away in 2002, but left a tremendous legacy for Oriole fans. Dave McNally, number 19, one of my favorite Orioles of all time. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.